Шановні колеги,
Esteemed colleagues, good afternoon. We are going to start a new working day in our center. The floor is given to the Presidential Administration Speaker on the ATO issues, Mr. Oleksandr Motuzyanyk. Colonel Motuzyanyk. Good afternoon, dear journalists. I would like to offer to your attention the major events which took place in the ATO zone over the last 24 hours. Lugansk segment, the enemy continues to shell the shelling using the mortar launchers and grenade launchers. And near Stanitsa Luganskaya during the dark hours of the day, in addition to the positions of Ukrainian ATO forces, also the enemy targets are the residential quarters. Near Shastia, the militants opened fire even during the day, trying to tease and disturb Ukrainian forces, which defend the left bank of Seversky Donetsk, but they do not use the heavy weaponry. To some extent, the combat actions became more active near Bakhmut Highway. In this area, the enemy resorts to the tactics of these small, provocative shelling our forces using grenade launchers and similar equipment. Also, the similar incidents were registered near Trokhizbenka, Novotoshkivska. Same situation in Orikhovo, Zolote, the situation is tense. And a similar situation in the Troitsk, the Lugansk and Donetsk region border, where the enemy yesterday 3 times opened fire using mortars launchers. The Donetsk segment, the shaky ceasefire situation remains near Svetlodarsk. The enemy doesn't use the heavy weapons and preferring to use to provide the disturbing shelling or firing using the firearms near the Rosatka, Lugansk, Lozovy. Near Gorlivka, the major combat actions took place yesterday late at night when the enemy started artillery and mortar shelling the Ukrainian ATO forces to the north of the city. The territories between the suburbs of Artemivsk, near suburbs of Artemivsk, were under fire. And all the way up to the front line in Mayorsk. We registered 120 millimeters and 52 millimeters howitzer in tanks. To the west of Gorlivka, the only tense point of combat was the village of Novgorodska of Dzержinski city council, where the enemy for 3 times violated the ceasefire regime. To the south, near Troitsk, Ukrainian positions for 4 minutes were shelled from 152 artillery. Near Donetsk, territory of active combat actions continues to be expanded. The tension points of tension to the north of Kamenka, to the east of Avdiivka, where the Ukrainian military guys were twice shelled using artillery. Near Donetsk, the enemy yesterday 3 times used the multi-rocket launchers Grad, as a result of which the residential quarters openly were under fire. Using the long-range artillery, the enemy attempts to carry out the well-targeted fire on the second line of defense of Ukrainian troops. In particular near Perumaisk and Karlivka. In Avdiivka, Opetnepetsky, Krasnogorivka, Marinka, the shooting continues around the clock, and the line of contact remains unchanged. On the whole, in the next segment, we registered the highest intensity fighting. The ringleaders of the militants regularly threat to launch an attack. According to the information and the occupied territories of the Donetsk region, in Inakovo, Torez, Shektarsk, they strengthened the regime of curfew. In Mariupol segment, the epicenter of combat or confrontation, to the east of Starognativka, where the enemy actually 7 times shelled our positions, 1 time even using the Grad launchers. To the south, near Granitny, the enemy for 2 times shelled Ukraine positions using 120mm mortars. Several mortar and artillery shellings on the part of the illegal armed formations were registered near Talakivka, Lebedinska, Shirokina. Mostly the militants activated their actions during the dark hours of the day with a short-term shelling. Those provocation actions do not impact or incur much harm or damage to Ukrainian fighters. Yesterday in the ATO, they registered 4 flights of the enemy's drones and 4 more UAVs of the aggressor country crossed the administrative border between the Crimea and Kherson area. Over the last 24 hours, there were no lesser casualties among Ukrainian and 4 were wounded.
Despite constant shelling and provocations from the militants, Ukrainian forces help local residents that live near front lines. So they deliver tons of humanitarian aids. These are necessities such as beds, linens, and hygienic means. Also, servicemen restored water supply in Marinka. Ukrainian law enforcement officers detained a young militant. Law enforcement officers detained the member of Vostok. This 23-year-old militant fought against Ukrainian army for several months, and before this he served at the occupants' checkpoint. They searched and confiscated 2 anti-tank mortars, 2 grenades, and also SBU officers detained informer of the enemy, nicknamed Rainbow. With the help of the self-made radio station, this criminal transmitted the information to the enemy about routes of movements of military equipment and deployment of Ukrainian military forces. During the last days, SBU officers and law enforcement officers discovered 3 caches of ammunition, and they confiscated in Marianka 2 grenade launchers, 3 hand grenades with fuses, and 1,000 cartridges of different caliber. Also in Starobinsk, in Gorivka, they found in the half-ruined building 9 grenades to RPG, and they also discovered in Artemivsk and confiscated grenade launchers, anti-tank mines, grenades with fuses, and they also found a car near Bakhmutivka, dangerous freight in the forest near this village. So they found also 43 TNT explosives, 3 anti-personnel mines, 143 grenades, 27 under-barrel grenade launchers, and sniper cross-head device.
Either in information whether the number of the shelling was decreased as compared to the previous day, it is a kind of the eye in this center of the storm, or let's say the quietness before the storm, and usually the Ukrainian guys use the artillery with the caliber more than 100 millimeters because there was information that our leadership allowed that, and if it's so, how many times did they use that? I understand your question. Depending on the intensity and the number of shelling, as compared to the previous day, the number of the shellings decreased. For example, the day before yesterday, they actually registered the record-breaking number of the shelling on the part of the militants, more than 160. Yesterday, we actually registered 136 cases of fire, so it somewhat decreased, the total number. As regards the weapons with the caliber more than 100 millimeters, with our troops use that against their enemies. As it is known, the withdrawal of the weaponry with a caliber exceeding 100 millimeters is one of the provisions of the Minsk agreements which we actually observed. This is confirmed by the Ukrainian party and by the OSCE special monitoring mission, but we know that in most cases the militants do not observe those provisions and requirements or demands. In this case, we we actually we have the right, in case in certain cases, to return those kind of weapons back to the front line and use them, as was the case, as you know, near Marinka. In Army Reserve, right, you know. And in all our cases, the ATO forces of Ukraine do not use the weapons with a caliber more than 100 millimeters. This kind of weaponry was taken to the storage area, as you know. Well, can we say that it's a kind of decreased number of shelling, that the situation is going to normalize, or this is kind of the quiet, the sounds before the storm? You know, I do not want to forecast anything, try to give any prognosis. We know that after next the so-called humanitarian convoy coming from the Russian Federation to our territory, the number and the intensity of shelling increases. But this specific week, as I mentioned before, the day before yesterday, we registered more than 170 shellings for 24 hours. On Thursday was more than 150. Now it was somewhat decreased, but still it's rather high. More than 100 times when they evaluated the ceasefire regime over 24 hours. More questions? No more questions. Thanks a lot. Thanks to everybody. Thank you, and see you again. So please follow our schedule on our website. Today we come to a close of our working day. Have a nice day. Thank you.